Welcome in the latest episode of the Betting the Pitch Soccer podcast. I'm here, the host of Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is where you're going to come for some Champions League discussion. We're going to discuss the four matches that are going on in the quarterfinal round. Plus, we'll get to an ultimate best bet end of show. We're 38 and 16, 70% so far this season, and going to try to improve that record. Got to make sure I tweet this out so people know we're live doing this on I guess Tuesday morning here in the United States as we get ready for the first day of the second legs of the quarterfinals. And it is tax day in the United States. If you've not done your taxes yet, go put them in. I need to do this show and then get the heck on that because the government does not like to wait for its money here in the United States. So, we're going to go through each of the matches left, and the comments are available. So clearly, we already have one comment coming in here. Joe Dollar, thank you for your longtime support of the podcast and patreon.com/real_G Warner. Today will be an overs podcast, according to Joe Dollar, but anyone who's listened to this podcast ever before will realize that is unlikely. So we're going to go through where we stand after the first legs, also get updated to advanced numbers, plus who we're going to bet on Tuesday and Wednesday this week. Look forward to a Europa League podcast coming as well, probably on Wednesday night. And then there is a baseball podcast on the pregame.com podcast network with Munaf Manji, recorded last night for the Tuesday. We've got more comments coming in. I'll show them as they come in. I promised I would do that. From Joe Dollar as well. Trump doesn't require tax payment moving forward. Do as I do. Well, that'd be nice. I would love for that to happen. I feel like I'm too pretty for jail, Joe, so I'm not really sure I'm ready for that. So we're gonna get into starting on Tuesday's card as soon as I get these numbers updated in front of me. And here we go. I did tweet that out, yes, so everyone should know we're live. I mean, that's why I think Joe, other than his 15 notifications across all his devices, he knows we're live, so you should too. Make sure you hit subscribe at the Real_G Warner on YouTube. Plus, Betting the Pitch podcast and Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Essentially, if you could like and give a 5-star review, it's huge for the search rankings. And thank you to one of my detractors. I'm not sure that's right, but thank you to Soy Dinero for upgrading the I understand you want as much time to get these podcasts digested as possible, and I'd love to. I'm just trying to run a ship here where I'm on a lot of different networks at all the same time and trying to balance that out with trying to get some usable advice to everyone as in their hands as soon as possible or in their ear holes as soon as possible. We'll start on Tuesday. Borussia Dortmund hosting Football Club Barcelona. Currently, Dortmund a half of a goal underdog at home with almost all the juice. Totals 3.25, juiced all the way to over. Where do we stand in this matchup? So Dortmund, I thought played a fairly competitive game, but then kept looking up the scoreboard. It kept getting worse and worse and worse. Barcelona up 4-0 on aggregate, and therefore we don't even have a two advanced number offered by BetOnline. All lines are quoted courtesy of BetOnline. If you don't have an account there yet and would like to get some free money or really just access to great juice compared to the rest of the betting market, especially for a baseball season where juice is king, cash is king, but juice is queen maybe. That's a great spot to do it. Feel free to slide in my DMs at the Real_G Warner across any social media platform. With that said, so Dortmund they're down 4-0, and that's probably too much to come back from. In just thinking out kind of what or gaming out the possibilities here, there's a good chance that Borussia Dortmund are eliminated from this competition already, but they do play well at home. They've been very good in the Champions League over years and years and years, especially finishing in the runner-up last season. Though honestly, I thought they outplayed Real Madrid in the final. Just couldn't finish. I think hit the post a couple times, woodwork at least. The question here though is, so Dortmund they have put all their baskets in the Champions League because they've done so poorly in the Bundesliga in Germany. They've been improving lately, which might help them with potentially claiming a European spot, though that looked very unlikely just a few short weeks ago. And you got to think that they're not going to give up on Champions League because it's their best chance at a trophy. Already out of the DFB Pokal, but the question is, how do you come back from 4-0? The answer is you probably don't sit back and defend, which is a big problem, of course, because Barcelona will rip you apart, and Barcelona high line doesn't really allow you to do much besides long balls over the top and trying to play an offside trap, and a lot of times you end up being offside because it's hard to do, and that's why Barcelona are on top of La Liga in Spain and are doing so well under Hansi Flick, former manager of Bayern Munchen and former number two on the German national team, former German national team manager, all those sort of things. I think from a Dortmund perspective, I mean, I love the scenario where they can win this match 3-0 and still not advance. Barcelona are celebrating at the final whistle. Borussia Dortmund are crestfallen, but they've covered your bet. So that's a really interesting to be in. I think that's probably my biggest interest in this matchup. My issue with the total at 3.25 is Dortmund need 4 goals. Barcelona only know how to go forward and only really know how to score. So that's going to be hard to really see a low scoring matchup here. And we do have another comment, Joe Dollar. Yes, thank you for coming in. Lineups will be key with some of these matches being blowouts. I agree. What I've kind of seen though in Champions League before with lineups, it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of rotation that goes on when it should. Like pretty much Barcelona are already in the semifinals, but I'm sure they'll play about as good of a lineup as they can. I think just because it's Champions League and they don't want to take any chances, but also I think I don't know. Jeez. I thought I was on Do Not Disturb. Oops, my bad. Um, with that said, I think there's just like in general, there's I'm sure there's bonuses for Champions League appearances. You want to play Champions League is the best way to say things. But I swear, when your season's on the line and it looks like you're advancing and you have a very important La Liga matchup this weekend, I would think that Barcelona would rotate quite a bit, but I don't think they will. And so that's another reason where goals are probably likely. And so unfortunately, I think any total above 3, I feel like is really hard to get to, especially in Champions League because these defenses are competent. Some of the most expensive lineups in all of European soccer, global soccer, are around in this competition. So that's the big question. I think how many goals are going to be scored? Probably a lot. So I guess if anything, at Joe Dollar, here's an over lean, but I think I like the Dortmund side that much more. We'll move next to Aston Villa and PSG. We do have two advanced numbers. I can talk about where this is updated to and all those sort of things, and I'll get to that in a second. Aston Villa currently a quarter goal underdog at home to PSG. Total is 3, just all the way to over, and all the juices on the Paris Saint-Germain side right now. So it might be that we see Aston Villa plus 1/2 before kickoff at 3 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Central here in the United States. But we'll see. So Aston Villa took the first goal. We're under a ton of pressure in the first leg last week against PSG in Paris. And with a kind of a shock lead, looked like they were in really good position to cover as a big underdog and also to potentially hit the under because they were going to continue to defend. Under certainly was a lot bigger threat when the big underdog away from home scores the first goal. But then, honestly, it looked like things were going to work out fairly well until Nuno Mendes with a late goal that really just killed everything. Side total, all things of that nature, and those were unfortunate, I think. And what I think this does for this matchup is it doesn't kill it by any means, but it certainly changes the needs of both these clubs. And so trailing 3-1 on aggregate, no, road goals don't matter, so doesn't so any 2 goal victory for Aston Villa will force extra time. If they win by 3, they will be able to move through. And I think that there's some value on the home team here, similar to the Dortmund perspective. But Aston Villa still has a chance. I mean, only down 2. Yes, both these teams are at home taking big losses away, especially brutal in stoppage time from PSG and scoring 3 unanswered goals, especially if you were with me on Aston Villa or under. I think the perspective, I mean, Aston Villa certainly has not been getting the strongest amount or strongest lines or much respect from English Premier League bookmakers for a while now. Like underdogs on the road across England against weaker clubs, really. Yes, you could argue that they were focused on Champions League, and Unai Emery had certainly said the opposite, that the English Premier League was the most important competition. No one believed him. But I thought Aston Villa has been playing really well domestically. And setting up very well for a trip to Paris, and taking the lead was a really great position. Unfortunately, they now need goals. And Aston Villa's strategy under Unai Emery, we've seen his ability to win this competition with Villarreal in the Spanish La Liga, one of the smaller clubs in a small town, a suburb of Valencia, essentially. Go in and just defend the whole time and knock Manchester United out, favored Manchester United in the Europa League Championship or title game final, and then find a way into Champions League the next season. The thing for Emery in this situation is he has to play aggressively. PSG, they want the ball. That's what the Luis their manager of skipping my name, Luis Enrique, I believe. I mean, he's a possession guy, has always been, was that way with the Spanish national team, and PSG are going to try to keep the ball. And what that's going to do is keep it out of Aston Villa's grasp. And I do feel like we see a fair amount of keep away from PSG in this matchup. So I think that again points to Aston Villa at home. Similar situation to Borussia Dortmund. They win 1-0 Aston Villa, and that's not enough for them to get through. They win 2-1. Same sort of story. PSG are celebrating, and I don't know that PSG are going to do much to really put themselves at danger. I think they're just going to possess the ball a lot. I don't know if they know how to possess the ball without trying to score, but at the same time, I think there's a good possibility that Aston Villa do hang around this matchup. If they get a first goal, PSG are immediately under the caution and are certainly concerned about extra time. So, I think we see a possession-based team like PSG and a give you the ball type team like Aston Villa set up in just that way. And Aston Villa at home, they ride a big crowd, but they have to come from behind and won't have a lot of the resource that is most important, which is possession of the soccer ball to do that. So give me Aston Villa. I'll take the quarter of a goal. I like the under 3 as well. Looks like we might even get 3.25 before kickoff, just based on where the juice sits. I might get a half of a goal as well in Aston Villa, but I think the 3 is important to push, and nearly was last week's. But and then two advanced number. So I guess I can kind of chart that out. So PSG currently minus 1,800, so 1,800 US will win you $100, whereas on the Aston Villa side, 100 will win you 875. So not great, but of course that's how sportsbooks do it with big handle, and I think you'll see it BetOnline. It's smaller than most other places, but that's been a pretty significant increase from from PSG minus 500 to advance. Climbed all the way up to minus 1,600. And now it's up to minus 1,800, as I think we see on match day. A lot of what seems like syndicates come in and just grab the most obvious type of plays, which does seem to work out from time to time, I must say. But that's going to be, I think, the big question here is how do you find some sort of semblance of success for Aston Villa, and can they get the first goal? Because if they can, then they are in great shape to potentially move through into the next round. But that's going to be a big issue, and I'm not really sure I believe that it'll happen. So, lean to Aston Villa, the home underdog, just in terms of where this number has moved. So it's moved 11% from when I last checked, from minus 1,600 to minus 1,800. And I think that's a way to explain that. It's just by saying this is what happens when there's a big team with a big advantage and someone's coming in there to grab not free money by any means, but potentially some better options. And in terms of, I feel like my math is now way off. What the heck did I do here? This is what happens when you excel on the fly. So a 72% change from PSG minus 500, so 1 to 5 odds to advance, to the now minus 1,800, and only around 59% from Aston Villa plus 360 up to plus 875. So not a ton of value there. I think that's probably obvious to most. So from Tuesday, for the ultimate best bet portion of the show, I'm going to give out my favorite pick here, and that is Aston Villa. I do like the under, but I think there's a good chance we see Aston Villa win this match. But the bigger risk, I think, is on goals scored. So I will go with Aston Villa, a quarter goal underdog, and will certainly advise waiting to see a half of the goal before kickoff, or at least getting lineups to make that decision. Now we move to Wednesday. I'm trying to think of anything to plug. We might be doing a Major League Baseball podcast tonight, discussing the Wednesday card, the return of the Bet and Pitch Baseball podcast with that A. Brooks Bets. I need to align schedules, but that's in the works, and hopefully it will happen tonight. But we'll move to Wednesday of Inter Milan, a pick'em, as I wear a Bayern Munchen shirt. Especially wanted to juxtapose because last week we had Inter shirt on, and Inter took a 1-0 lead, and then gave up an equalizer, and then got a late goal on a counterattack in perfect fashion to kill the under, but to win the side and put Inter and the 2 advanced number in a much better position, which I had all those things. So I guess a split with a very important road advantage to then take home into San Siro is certainly a worthwhile trade, I would say. Though it would have been nice, I think, to win both side bets and then still be in great position, equal heading into the home arena. But here we have Inter Milan, a pick 'em right now to Bayern Munchen. More juice on the buy-in side, totals 2 and 3/4. Juice slightly more to under. There's a couple cents difference. So just from where I was, I think heading into the first leg, thank you to those of you that are here live, as I've already been reading some comments off. If you got anything, throw them in the chat, and I will respond when I see them. But just from an Inter perspective, I feel like things went as well as they could in the first leg, and they're going to try to continue that. And yes, they are fighting a big fight in Serie A and Italy at in their home domestic league, but also Bayern, they haven't yet clinched the Bundesliga. Or I mean, it's been looking like the Meisterschale was theirs for a long time. But I have not been that impressed with Bayern Munich this season. I feel like their Bundesliga title is really because Bayer Leverkusen have been horrible, and I think a lot of reversion to mean after a lot of lucky wins in their almost invincible season in 2023-24. But Bayern, I mean, under Vincent Kompany have been very, very stable, which I don't think we see a ton. Their defense has been better, but I don't know necessarily that they are really that scary to me. So I took Inter as a pretty big underdog in the first leg with the idea that even if they were trailing, they'd have the home leg to do something. So I like that idea. We'll see what happens in this matchup, of course. But Inter are a really tough nut to crack. They've done very well defensively across Champions League and across really any competition over the last few seasons. And I think the big question is how to Bayern score. And certainly it took them 80 or so minutes in the first leg to do it in their home arena. Yes, things change, and there's going to be a lot of desperation there with a aggregate deficit. But I'm still a believer in the Inter defense, and I honestly feel like while the worst case scenario if you back Inter as a pick 'em here is that they're down a goal and aren't really trying to do much late in the game, which you normally would get from a team that just doesn't want to have a losing result because you get no points from that in domestic play or in, I guess, the league phase of the Champions League. But that's been what feels like months since that wrapped up. But I think the general perspective is Inter, especially if they move to a quarter goal underdog, I think that'll be too much for me to avoid just because I think the Inter side is better. And I really just, that's kind of, I guess I'm sleeping the bet I made. I have no interest in really trading my to advance number, which I'll get to right now, I guess. So Inter Milan minus 285 now to advance, which is a pretty significant difference from the closing number of, let's see, they were plus 113 is the close. So they've jumped considerably. It was a 137% move from to the previous number that I had jotted down as minus 300. Let's see. And Bayern have moved from minus 150 at open to minus 137 close, which is a 10% drop. Then to 225 now is where they stand. So let me plot this out so I can say exactly what this is. And we have. So Bayern have moved 4% down, so they've got some money has hit them as a definitely a decent chance to advance and certainly some value compared to that initial number. But it's changed 167%, so that's a big difference. That's what happens when you lose a home leg. On the Inter side, they've moved about 142% now from the plus 122 number to the minus 285. So I guess there's some discrepancy there from what I've been reciting. Here we go. So Inter Milan under 2.5 plus 625 is Joe Dollar's interest. So we're talking a parlay here, I'm assuming. Inter and under. And that's certainly possible. I just feel like there's parlays are a tough game. Yes, the odds are great, but man, you got to win those. And the amount of times that they split, where it's hard enough to win a single bet, I think across any sport at this point, and beating markets is hard to do. Certainly, you could go with well, we're certainly correlated. Inter do advance the goalless draw, but I just feel like that's hard to see, and I think we see a very good chance that Bayern Munchen have one of those where if they are one behind late, they're sending the goalkeeper up, who's not really that scary to me, or at least is scary if you were backing Bayern would be my direct point of view. And these are far-fetched scenarios, but I think there's some huge risk of an empty netter that we see in hockey in the United States all the time, but the worst kind in soccer because one goal matters so much more in soccer when it's usually more than a third of a total, whereas in hockey it's 20% or so or even less nowadays. So I think for best bets from this matchup, Inter Milan and Bayern Munchen, I'm interested in a low scoring game here that I think fits where Inter have really built their club. I really would love to see that they get to a quarter goal underdog, but we'll see if that ends up occurring. And certainly would be a little bit of a concern because that means the Champions League market is pretty significantly on the Bayern Munchen side of the boat. Though, granted, I do like to be on the opposite side, to say the least. And I like under here because I think that fits the style of the game even more. We got a quarter goal extra, I think, based on Inter's lead on aggregate, though they're going to play a really tight game and do their best to keep it a low scoring one. And I think at home that benefits them even that much more. Calls that could be 50-50 might go the Inter way more so than they would certainly in Munich. And I think there's also a huge desire for me to see this hit a full three so you get that push there. I don't know if it'll get there based on the juice, unfortunately. So move to the last game on the Champions League card for this quarterfinals leg two edition. Nick V, thank you for coming in. This game is a over. It certainly could be, and just I think before we move away from Inter and Bayern, the way that happens. Oh yes, get on there for Joe, of course. But I think there is some possibility there, and the way that happens is if Bayern are if they take a lead, then I don't know necessarily what the reaction Inter will be. Just playing out that scenario because I think it's usually worth it, and especially because Bayern were such a favorite at home in the first leg. Um, the issue I think is that there is if Bayern do take a lead, maybe there's no change in how Inter play. They still want to score, but they still want to counterattack. And I think that protects the under way more than it does the Inter side because I think they will take extra time. And I think they also would potentially, I mean, if you're a home team, yeah, I don't think Inter sees themselves as an underdog in any sort of atmosphere. But if they are equal on aggregate, I think they still play the same way. Only thing that really changes to them is they fall behind by a goal, and there's also a chance that they don't really even change either. So I think there's a lot pointing toward under 2 3/4 of this matchup, and that's my biggest interest in that one. So we'll move now, if everyone is okay with that, to Real Madrid and Arsenal. Real Madrid with two set piece goals um, Rice, Declan Rice, incredible. Both look like they're pretty much unsavable from a goalkeeper that saves everything, Thibaut Courtois. But brutal, and then a late goal and these are all late goals, all I think in the second half of the second half. So goals for a long time, and now Real Madrid are way behind, 3-0 down on aggregate, and must come from behind and steal this one out of the fire in their competition, where they've never really, at least over the past few seasons, I don't remember or recall them having such a big deficit. So Real Madrid currently 3/4 of a goal favorite with all the juice. Total is three, and the juice is split both ways. To advance number, Arsenal minus 700, so 1-7 or 7-1 on, and Real Madrid plus 475. Not huge, I guess, numbers to advance considering a huge deficit, but and there have been some crazy things that have happened in the Bernabeu in Madrid, but this is asking so much, and it's going to be so hard to see. There has been some money coming in that has bought back the Real Madrid to advance number from down from 5-1 odds to plus 475, and decrease of 5%. Arsenal have decreased from minus 750 to just 7-1, or 7.5 to 1 to 7-1. So that's a 7% decrease. Changes from the initials, gigantic. From Arsenal opening plus 138, they now are minus 700. That's a change of 119%. So big change, and they pretty much look like a shoe in to go through. The big question though is if you're laying that 7-1 on, or betting 1-7 odds for Arsenal to advance, is as they start conceding goals, I think it gets very scary. And the big question I think for Arsenal coming into this competition would how would they score goals? Two set pieces from Declan Rice certainly would do that. Here we go. 0-0 draw plus 1600, so 16-1. I think Joe's referring to Arsenal and to Real Madrid in this one. I mean, if you're seeing a goalless draw here, so that's pretty much Real Madrid just putting their feet up and not really trying, or just the defense is being so good. I think that's possible, but Arsenal just really haven't looked that impressive to me. The big question I think coming into this tie in the first leg was, how is Arsenal going to score goals? Well, two set pieces and then another goal when they had a big lead. Certainly answered that question, though I'm not sure I'm that much of a believer at this point. And I think Arsenal don't need a goal. They're going to do their best to sit in and do everything they can. Nick V, thank you so much. Just wanted to say thanks for everything you do, Griffin. Gave you a 5-star rating Apple Podcast. That is huge for the search rankings. It's huge for all those sort of things. Thank you for doing it, and you are the best. Arsenal defense is amazing in UCL. I would agree, but I think that's a lot because the rest of the English Premier League well, excuse me, we're talking Champions League here. Okay. I guess what I was going to say, because I read that so quickly, is in the Premier League, I think Arsenal's defense has been so good because everyone is afraid of them. I don't know in Champions League if that's the same case. I think there's a lot more belief in one's ability or the club talent because it's the highest spenders across all leagues across the top area to play soccer in the world in Europe. Um, but I don't know necessarily. I mean, there's been an undertrain that was paying very, very well on Arsenal for a lot of the season. And I think it's because they've been able to dominate games across any competition. But it's certainly changed really since things started to deteriorate and everyone seemed to get hurt. And definitely it does play or pay more towards under, point more towards under with Arsenal losing a bunch of players, especially goal scorers. But the loss to Gabriel Magalhaes, center back for the season, Brazilian, certainly is a big concern for Arsenal. And Real Madrid are going to do their best to exploit that. The styles that both want to play. So Arsenal want the ball, control the game, and force Real Madrid back into their own end. It was working very well in London, but not getting many goals until the set pieces breached the walls and it got out of hand. I think Arsenal will aim to do that same sort of thing, though we've seen them play in a nullifying, stymieing, mess the game up, muck the game up in the past against Manchester City. I think there's a good chance we see that type of matchup here. So I think my biggest interest is actually to under 3 goals, and certainly Joe leans that way with throwing out nil-nils out there. I do feel like Real Madrid are better than that. They've done so well in this competition, though this clearly is a different charting new territory for Real Madrid. But I think the fact that Arsenal don't need goals here does help them significantly because at 3-0, if Real Madrid or somehow get back there on aggregate, or excuse me, it would be 3-3 on aggregate. That does force extra time. You see a very conservative end of match. The big problem is if Arsenal score, then it's gonna be very hard for me to see this going under, unless their defense really stands up and forces Real Madrid to break them down, and they cannot. Real Madrid's defense is really porous. Unfortunately, they've dealt with a ton of injuries themselves, and have been playing just like wingers at fullback. That doesn't work very well. Fede Valverde has been awesome dropping back from midfield, but lineups are important in this one, as Joe's already mentioned, and we'll see kind of what that looks like and how this all goes. PSG 3-0, Madrid 3-0. That's what Joe Dollar's calling, and we'll see if that ends up happening. So I think biggest interest for me, I think Real Madrid certainly can win this match and probably will win it at home, but will they win by enough? So I'll go under 3, Arsenal at Real Madrid as my best bet on that, I guess, second matchup on Wednesday. And I still think the desire is there, but the push on 3 is fairly important with Arsenal in that matchup. So I'll go Arsenal under 3 as my best bet from Wednesday. So now it's time for those are results for Arsenal and UCL. Yes, so 0-0 draw. There we go. And yeah, he already shouted out the Inter and under 2.5 as a parlay kid type stuff there. So okay, it's time to get to ultimate best bet. Already mentioned there's a Major League Baseball podcast covering the Wednesday baseball, or excuse me, the Tuesday baseball card. It's already out on at pregame now on Twitter, or RJ Bell's Dream Preview, wherever you get your podcast. We're still talking getting at A Brooks Betts contract signed to get him in for Tuesday night, discussing the Wednesday card on this same channel, Betting the Pitch, or Apple Podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, at the Real_G Warner on YouTube and on Instagram. And it's time to make the ultimate best bet. So let's get into it. Of course, easy enough as I'm knocking everything on the ground in front of me, including the recording device. That is time to get in here. Okay, let's go reverse the screen and then let's get into it. Does it knock everything over almost again? Okay, let's get into it. Hey, this is the Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet for the quarterfinals match day or leg 2 of the Champions League. Went through all of the possibilities of who can advance, the new prices, plus the spread bets, and I smashed together the Tuesday and Wednesdays for this ultimate best bet portion of the show. We've had a great start to the season. Going to try to keep this record alive. We're 38 and 16, 70%. But from Tuesday, let's go Aston Villa at quarter goal underdog at home in Champions League. On Wednesday, we'll go Arsenal under 3 goals. But for the ultimate best bet on this episode, check out patreon.com/real_G Warner for more content, especially all baseball plays and soccer plays for the rest of the season. I'll go Aston Villa, a quarter goal underdog at home against PSG. I feel like they were in it, but hanging on for dear life in the first leg. I think things change a fair amount in Birmingham. Maybe they've picked up the trash by now, probably not. But I'll go Aston Villa +1/4 as the best bet on this episode. And that does it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you could please hit subscribe, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It's huge under Betting the Pitch. Subscribe at @real_G Warner on YouTube, and maybe hit the follow button on Instagram as well. Great show. Keep it up. Thank you so much for joining live today, Joe Dollar. You were as helpful as Nick V on the YouTube stream. Thank you, Nick, as well. And if that was a 5-star review, I guess I should check that and read it off, as I do promise to do those things, though I think sometimes they take a little while to show up. Maybe content moderation. I'm not sure. Nick V's history with leaving any sort of I came across a Joe Dollar asking Big East Ben to convince Griffin to start betting favorites, overs, and both teams to score in football, which that's not gone so well so far, but more 5-star reviews maybe from your burner accounts, Joe, would certainly help through the podcasts. We're 4.7 out of 5. Thank you for all those that have come in here beforehand, and hopefully we can get more of that. And thank you to those who joined live. The full episode will be available on Betting the Pitch, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify, and on YouTube very shortly. I'll see you all very soon. Just going to put this on Canva, get this uploaded, and then let's get doing it. Keep doing your thing, Nick V. You're awesome, Nick V. Thank you so much for coming in, and I hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you next time on the Betting the Pitch podcast, likely on Wednesday night likely Tuesday night for baseball, but next soccer podcast will be Wednesday for the Europa League second legs.